All right, so this is Brian. I found a workaround to get a Geometer Sketchpad graph, so an exact version of a function, into SketchUp on the desktop version. And there's a way to export this so that students who would be using the SketchUp web app on their Chromebooks would be able to access it. So once you've imported your PNG, as you can see from one of my earlier videos, what you can go to is 3D Warehouse from the File menu and Share Model. And in doing so, it's going to ask you, you want to simplify it? Say no, because these textures I do want to keep, even though they are not currently common public textures. Once you're in here, you're going to end up, it'll likely have this show up, and then once you click on something to share it, you'll end up logging in. You'll have to create an account. So just create a Gmail, WSESU account, log in with Google. And then you can give your object a name. So I named mine square root function. I made sure it was publicly available, right? And then I gave a description, saying kind of what the intent was. Trace the curve and then rotate it about the x-axis using an arc and the follow me tool. And then when I shared this, so I had share originally, now it says update, then it uploads it to the server, and it takes a little bit while for it to refresh. But now once you are in SketchUp, so on my.sketchup.com/app, where the students can log in, they could open this up and they can delete the guy. And then the way you can access that public file is under components. And you can actually search all sorts of cool components this way, all sorts of pre-made fabricated objects that they could then import into their own drawings. But mine was called square root function. And since mine was such a unique name, there aren't many options here. And you can see, oh, by Brian W., that's me. And so I click on that, and it takes a little bit for it to load in. And if you notice, zoom out here, it's now placing that object within my current drawing. So I'm just going to snap it to the origin, and that looks just fine. I can now close this window. And if I rotate above this, now the student would have the access to this sketch. And then they could do something either using, let's see, the line tool, and they could trace it, do an approximation, every unit or so. Actually, and notice actually how it was just snapping like that, and I didn't want it to. It snaps more when I'm zoomed out, but if I zoom in, it'll give me the detail that I want. So they could trace it like this if they wanted. Even trickier is doing a freehand trace, which at least with the drawing tool, it'll give you a smoother surface if you use the freehand version rather than a whole bunch of, you'll kind of see these lines that pass through the object. And so if they trace it one way or another, they can then turn this into a surface. So kind of draw that. Let's see. Oh, let's see. And then from this endpoint across, snapping to that edge, it creates a surface. I'll trim the hairs here. And now they have a surface that is an approximation, a pretty close approximation of the square root function. And we could actually import our own functions that we've drawn up in Geometer Sketchpad this way. Now, in order to draw an arc, they're going to want to use this arc tool, the pi tool. They pick the point on the axis about which they'll rotate it, and you need to rotate it in the right direction, although I guess we could choose a different axis. So I'm going to snap this to the red axis, so notice it's red when it's doing that. I could rotate it along any weird axis I wanted, but I'll snap it to the red axis, and then pick the endpoint over here, so kind of what am I going to draw about, and I'm going to arc this, and the greater the arc you draw, it still has the same number of polygonal sides for that. Let's see. So I'm just going to do a quarter circle, so it'll kind of have more of that surface there. And now we can use the extrude tool, follow me, and bring it along this arc like so. Endpoint. And there we go. There we have my surface that's been rotated about the x-axis by 90 degrees. It's somewhat imperfect because I use the freehand tool, obviously. But if you use the line tool when you draw your line, you'd actually end up seeing a whole bunch of kind of like longitudinal lines making up your surface. It won't show up as all one figure. But yeah, so there you go. So now as a teacher, I could have students create their graphs in Geometry Sketchpad. I could have them send me a .png of it. I could open it up in the desktop version of Sketchpad. I could export it to the 3D warehouse, and then they could actually access their model on their Chromebooks and rotate it as such. All right, thanks for watching.